So everybody, it's King here. Hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome to a former Taylor's video. I know I haven't uploaded in a minute, been touching grass. With that being said, hope you guys are having a great day. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it may be for y'all. I really hope again that you guys are doing good. And if not, hopefully this video brightens your day. With that being said, as you guys see on the thumbnail, mixed title and everything, there's not just going to be a normal tier list video, there's going to be me recreating a former tier list video. As you guys who are not new here, you know that I made an Invincible power scaling tier list way back when one of the most popular vids. And even though I understand a lot of reasons why I said what I said, I stand a little bit with some different creative like consensus and all around logic for why some characters might be where they are. I understand a lot of it was flawed, invalid, not most critical, not most knowledgeable, and I've come here after a great deal of research, retaking in of so many different broad tales of not only lore, power scaling opinions, different case of big, I would say knowledge keepers and different greater A linger of different, assets and resources to really actually compile my thoughts to really fully complete and make, to me, even though of course always going to be strongly and greater advised to be in my record of opinion, but still make the best resort to critical, highly most definitive possible tier list I can most proudly make, but without the possibility of over theatrical wording. I basically mean to say that I've went to better means of highly educating myself in all crossroads that coming together this tier list, way more awake, not thrown together in a mix of overnight, and not just considering a bunch of different fling of possibilities, saying most strongly in the best sense of knowledge, especially not pre-done, as you guys see, and doing it all at once to make a greater, elaborate, detailed tier list. I not only went about taking in all my case of not only past readings of Invincible to a greater case of mindset and rereading and doing some things, but now I've went a greater furthermore to actually buy some different greater extended material of Invincible and rereading not only a big jungle of multiple different form of, I like to say, from my full rereading, absolutely peak that I cannot wait to see actually adapted into season 4, which I'm very excited for, but a greater deal of Invincible and where Invincible as a show and adaptation can go. But undeniably, Invincible as a series is absolutely peak. I've talked about Invincible before, and I took consideration on my different talks of power scaling with Invincible from rewatching, rereading, and taking in multiple different opinions. And I went on my way, even though I own specific volumes and specific keepings of Invincible, I went on my way to not only buy Invincible Compendium 1, 2, 3, and Invincible Universe Compendium 1 to fully collage my opinion. I'm here to give you guys the best possible tier list that I can. But most importantly, if you guys are new here, leave a like, share, subscribe, comment. If you really want to go ahead, support me more, hit the bell icon so you're notified every time I make a video. I really appreciate you guys. If you disagree with this video, let me know why. If you're neutral or agree, let me know why as well. I want to go and hear from everybody, different perspectives. But if you hardcore disagree, you really want to have a greater case of opinion with me, right? In greater sense of, be explained, or, you really want to go debate and have a cohesive, cool cultural conversation and be civil, my Discord is RPKing324. We can go and hash that out. With that being said, though, I hope you guys will enjoy. Let's go and get it in. Starting on the top, as you guys see, we have Pink Goddess, aka self-explanatory, who will be there. Ultimate Pillar of Power should also be mixed self-explanatory. Galactic Vanguards, the top dogs, the big powerhouses, the big muscles, the big cable vatos, all that stuff. Cosmic Threats as World Nightmares are literally cosmic cable people, and or in greater talk of the case of being living natural disasters, planet wipers, scourgers, whatever you could think, are that metahumans are top, very crazy affinity pool, different power capabilities, very adept, all that stuff. Street tier / low super people that are great with their powers, great in their capabilities to move and do different side lists of things, and are very much cable people to make multiple things come into play in multi-unique, faceted format. Fodder is for people that are deliberately, wastemen, gatekeepers, nothing of relevance, too powerful / weak to scale, or the type of people that you would very much consider being very iffy to scale. They can be very powerful, but could be very weak. It's very mixed debatable where you can actually most properly scale them. This is a way more multifaceted form of, tier that I'll talk more in depthly about every time I scale somebody possibly, but there's very deliberate people that you could never confidently scale without a bunch of what if, right? But then question marks and no scale for people I don't know, don't got no scale, and aren't even fighters or nothing of relevance. I have a lot of characters on this tier list, but I'm talking about the most mainstream explicit characters, but I have went a little bit more and greater thorough research to actually conclusively make my different tiering. So starting off with the case of this man Octoboss or where the fuck. I think that he's just a stereotypical like greater like gunning form fighter. He's nothing of greater like standout, right? He's nothing of greater like scoff at. But in the case of his fighting and whatever standing lateral capability he can bring, he's at least a decent form of, you know what I'm saying, bigger like tank foe. Has done mainly a lot of things from contextual help and greater stuff, can overpower, bang under in people, fight people better in the case of his, you know, natural environment, which is underwater, and just is a general stereotypical greater blockbuster type person, even talks like blockbuster, just being this big dumb brute that doesn't even actually speak formal English. Then you have the Reanimen with guns and greater form of arsenal, the ones that will go about betraying Robot at the end of the series. I would say that because the Reanimen are very like almost every time fodder and don't really stand too much out. They shouldn't really be anything of greater weight and actually don't actually hold anything of greater concern. They're just very whatever means of just, you know what I'm saying, like kind of stormtrooper-esque, guaranteed to be just pushed through by anybody that actually like has some greater capabilities. They're easily passable to be done in. They could even actually affect Robot's, you know, army. They were more or less a stepping stone distraction, and again, anyone can not only push through them, but literally bush burrow through them. They're literally just meat bags to be thrown a lot of the time, unfortunately. It's because, you know, these motherfuckers are just undead cyber augment to the case of just like volatiles, and only with the Reanimen Invincible variants could you stretch them to be a lot more stronger, but a lot of time they're just not that good, especially because it's more quality than quantity, you could argue, akin to the show. But still, you have the case of someone like Thula, who is easily a character to World Nightmares. I think in every case of the way that Thula, but not only what was said, the fact that she's one of the few survivors of the case of the Viltrumite Purge, the Scourge virus, and is easily the second strongest female Viltrumite. Should be something a great capable addressment, you know, got a scorpion ponytail like case of Blade, does a lot of clean shit, has a decent fighting, she did get ragdolled by Battle Beast, she got overstepped, she was one of the few people that was giving, you know, a little bit of the beats to this man Thrag and jumping him and doing all that stuff. So I think he's already stood up for the fact that she's a very capable shawty in a lot of forms. So yeah. Then you got this dude, I think he's just fucking Beef's dad. Then you have Big Dog Allen after the 500-year time skip, having a case of evolution after getting bombed by some random whatever explosive like whole kablam. My man got entirely like subsequently nuked. My man got Diva bomb, took half a great deal like this form of Citadel, like Eiffel Tower, you know, intellectual. It's even like almost seemed like the Empire State Building. I forgot the exact case of design, but the man didn't just get wiped by some like general subsequent like flashbang bomb. The man got entirely whole subsequently nuked in this mug. So whatever the greater case of the blast was, would be something that could, at a time of a different version of Allen, almost wipe him off the sensors. He got wiped of his arms, his legs scorched, barely even seem invisible, eye not even no fucking visibility. My man got entirely cooked. But from the case of the ashes rising up like shit, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, he became this more like scaled up brown abomination, already being like the galactic Bing Grim, guardian of the space wave, strongest in the open, right? And even though this version of Allen is a greater advanced version of what the Allen we know of in the case of time, it is very much prevalent that this version of Allen, right, is, you know, easily way more stronger than all the rest of them. Even if he is of greater rustiness, it's been 500 years, he's just more like a president than actually a greater fighter, be the leader of the coalition and all. But yeah, I think in every case of the way that you should be there and be way stronger. This version of Allen, though, was a lot more strong than everyone else. You know, this is his first greater pre to greater post evolution, right? Very strong. Walls can't contain him. No Viltrumite can hang with him. He was built different. He was running through niggas. He was a very great A beast. He was an absolute slaughterer. Man was absolute built different tank. Man moving like the Tyrone of the galaxy, right? So very self-explanatory there, right? But then his greater next evolved form, it's not entirely of like a different form of death, but it's like pre to the mix of his evolved form here. I think should be very evidently here, not only because of the case of what he's endured, stood against, and the type of like level of different heavy boasts of way greater strength, and even a mixture of like armor or something to address with this version of Allen. He should be multiple times in every qualification a lot more stronger. So I think that that's self-explanatory. Obviously, Baby Allen, you know, 2 power slash with the scale, you know, our little adorable Cyclops. But in Allen, of like a good deal of Compendium 1. Like this is pre him getting jumped by the Viltrumites with Lucan involved and all that. This easily stamps him as being way more capable and undeniably so stronger than a great run of niggas. He's easily like a good metahuman. You could put him in Cosmic Threat / World Nightmares as he was stronger than the early coming up Mark. He did get bodied by this man Nolan, but got pushed back to the point where he was able to at least survive. He didn't get entirely thrashed and like wrecked. So I like to say that he reasonably qualifies for that, but that's just that with all that being said. But next we have the case of one of the just default standard like Reaniman early on, easily fodder, so explanatory, Wasteman. But then you have the case of Monster Girl, right? Considering the case of obviously her because monster form, not just her here, who has grown easily greater weight, stronger, Sue, older, more capable, but her monster form is still just as greater sense of powerful and holding back. She's able to go ahead and push through a lot of the different technology and capabilities of Robot, go out, do a lot of what she's doing, a lot of different confliction and heavy deal of more emotional wreckage was putting her down. But I think Monster Girl has proven to be a very built different, brute and asset when she really wants to. Right? Very sad character, to be fair. We feel bad for her, but obviously, Amber, aggressive mother of Oliver, R.I.P. None of relevance. Then we have the big man himself, Angstrom Levy, D1 Dick Rider, KSI, ball sack head. So Battlefield removal is a very great qualification for how he could be a lot more higher, but talking about just bare minimum banging out, being a mixed glass can of moving around and doing this, and the fact that he wouldn't be able to soften up people as much with a different pool of, doing Battlefield removal, there's other people who would just be way more faster, would not hesitate to kill him from either actually knowing him or the fact that his stuff would not be able to work on full easy access to take him out. I think in every case of way, just physical standing, he's just bare minimum like a greater metahuman person, as even though it was from a lot of context and he's not a normal person, his augmentation to advancing of his body and exoskeleton like level credit possibly, cybernetics or just having like enhanced to greater capabilities and being easily like a greater superhuman aspect, of him. He do mention the fact that in every case of this greater like stretch, like peak superhuman greater aspect as well, or whatever perspective you have, he would never be on a greater case of level of people. And without Battlefield removal being a great qualification, he shouldn't do anything. Even like a greater version of him, as using like these different like tech bots, he really only pushes someone like this man Mark back akin to others. And without Battlefield removal, right, doing a bunch of different heavy, cunning, ingenious, ingenuity, tactical-like means of planning that puts people in situations where they can't act as much to be able to do this. I say anybody that's really trying to kill or getting around can fully force push their way through not only the portal's subsequent overhaul of vacuum to pull them in when they're in mixed states of like zone or whatever. It's easy capability for people to best them. And he barely even actually landed true actual weight of pressure to Mark. He couldn't really do anything when Mark really wanted to get on his ass. He almost died, got his whole right arm ripped off, and he would have entirely eviscerated him, hopefully. Arguably should have entirely clocked his head off right then and there, even with what this man Angstrom could try to contemplate of a different possible fate. It doesn't put down the fact that indeed Angstrom is really just not that strong in any capacity, even with this greater super peak human mixed scale of whatever you want to call him. But in this is easily the case of a very powerful shawty, a disgusting, trifling, every level of just abhorrent woman, but as a mad fiend for battle and a very killer person, scout, closer, tracker, whatever, she easily is the form of not only, very high elite Viltrumite, is easily the strongest female Viltrumite, and obviously dominated Mark in his first encounter. I'm not going to talk about the second one because that's just disgusting. And she is just a person that multiple times over has been seen to be very powerful, but a mixed dude can take different blows from Thaddeus, Allen, even if she could have easily got clocked into next week, right? Shawty was big leaking from the nose. Shawty could not really greater stand in comparison to others. I think actually the comic directly she was looking for the Battlefield comparison, and even if she wasn't on the same record hold of greater combatment, different standings toe to toe in every lane against people, she was not so easily to be done in them, right? All the aspects of different proclaim and talk of different conflict, survived both cases of Ultramite wars to a great deal, and even in the second one with her dying was about a mixed mistake of trying to, save Eve, get her out of Dodge, and got cleaved of her chest and had her entire case of heart entirely splintered by Ragnar, and died, I guess, with some lasting redemptive saving grace or something. But even then, someone like Anissa is definitely driving home of one of the most powerful cases of Ultramites and is very up there for a reason. But yeah, you see the case of the tutor of this man Oliver Queris or Aquis, or how to say his name, being either the first one or the second one is very mixed. Obviously, a member of the Guardians of the Globe, and there's so many different debates about how the Guardians of the Globe, not just in activity but easily in different prognition of like power, easily pull way more greater hail of ridiculous feats, accolades, teamwork, capability than the first Guardians. They have proven not only to earn that name or do better than them than what they could ever comprehend. This Aquarius, and even with the credit of like the most known, greater knowest of like case of like wisdom or heavy practitioners, highly prowess individuals, and knowledge keepers of the world, like Cecil, Britt, Rudy / Robot or Rex, or whatever the fuck you want to call them, have case of like multiple talk of again placing a lot of people in the case of the Guardians of the Globe that are like the best of the best to be there, best possible heroes. They talk about multiple forms of like the exploits of the Guardians of the Globe, performing higher echelon of like capabilities than even the Guardians of the Globe could ever think of. And with Immortal or not, they had still pulled superb shit. So there's a level of like, even in an alternate world, mixed to be possibly a canon hypothetical, what if, that if Iron Man did pull up to the Guardians, even though he would probably outbest them all, and even though not exactly the same way, because obviously it's an adaptation, but in the words of Robert Kirkman, I think a different accounting and just the fact of like, again, how it was supposed to be a way more detailed representation of things, like in comparison to the comics, right? Where Omni-Man, Speed Blitz, and caught them all lacking, there's the fact that possibly in the show, if they did try to fight him, they at least could give him a little bit of tell. So probably not to the same degree as like the show, because that was a whole war, that was a full all-out brawl, that was a squabble for squabbles, easily a great A showcasing of what a contingency plan for an evil Superman with the capability, I can't even fully sink his code, like to actually like describe from a form of like ting, but it's just crazy how dirty this nigga Omni-Man did everybody. Again, Pillar of Menace, Red Air Force energy affluently from Nolan. This nigga could easily purge and Speed Blitz, put everybody dummy over 6 feet under, to where he could just wipe every motherfucker off their feet and run through them like a whole bullet train. Omni-Man is easily, regardless of the mix, different contextual jumping and different glorified, means of heavy planning and mix-up on him, he's just out of the comprehension of them, to where I could say easily that almost all the Guardians should either be here, mixed to scale, you could just say because they're supposed to be greater intake of like Guardians or something, to be possibly like bottom of metahumans and mix like perception on that. But I think for now that they're very iffy to scale, that you can't really suffice to say most conclude, because again, without jumping, without mixed context, Omni-Man probably would run through them in greater Speed Blitz foreshowing, and that version of Omni-Man, even if you want to say it's a possible alternate greater argument of example for this man Omni-Man, if you would actually face them heads up and then sneak them, I say in every capability, in every argument, in every regard, that's just a great showcasing, a great demonstration in every regards that this man, Omni-Man, still was over them, and if it wasn't for the mixed occasions of just more or less like trippy hacks and maneuvers of these people being used against him and being disoriented by the Green Ghost, he wouldn't have been defeated. And even though that again could be hypothetical to an alternate version, like what another person will get to, it is an alternate dimension, meaning powers and mixed plane of people are different, and you can mix argue that even though I wouldn't say no one ever went for anything to be categorized so detailed more stronger, even though the more order you get as a Viltrumite, the more possibility of pull of strength and knack for this and greater capability you can have, akin to like an Olympian. There wasn't anything really predominantly showcasing his strength being so much different to where I would say you could really candidate him something so much more, you know what I'm saying? But besides that whole Art the GOAT, great uncle, peak suit designer. But for Adam, Eve, wife of Invincible, mother, Terry Grayson, Dime Ting, the thing about, Adam Eve is that even though I did overestimate what she could do, I do agree that she could have in greater potential be something else. But there's a lot of arguments that Adam Eve, in with her great case of rack of all trades, creativity, ridiculous versatility, she knows the case of battlefields, different means of different like unique compound physical science and different degree of like incongruities and stylistic ways to possibly bring power and bring unique arsenal to the battlefield. A lot of what she does cannot actually bring any actual true challenge to the people against her, as a lot of times she just pushes people back. She just pressurizes them with something else. Her abstract, form of like trying to pull a lot of different crazy ingenuity and detail like style of like different containments or ground for possibly mixing and tripping people up to make different advantage only does so much. She more or less stalls for time. She's easily able to be punished, even though I wouldn't say she's just like some whatever, pushover like general human. She's easily peak human to be able to hurt like Universa with a very much, yes, caught lacking right hand and to be able to any subsequently survive some different blows that she takes, obviously Newton's third law, but I wouldn't say she scales to any actual greater case of Viltrumite. She doesn't scale to anyone of greater regard. She easily gets overpowered by just the bodies of other weaker Viltrumites, like, Thrax, Multi-Children. She easily has been pushed through multiple things. She couldn't stand to a lot of these different conflicts. She couldn't handle the different Ragnars and different stuff, scratching against her bubble. She couldn't really stand against a lot of people. She got overpowered by the Sequid. She got injured in the fucking Invincible War. She got splintered by Conquest, got turned into a shish kebab by his left hand, got literally pauldroned through the body in every aspect of the way. She could never truly stand against any aspect of these people in actual pit for pit, bang for bang, ball for ball. She's very much a glass cannon to them, and she never would in any capability actually be able to do anything. And anytime she does fight somebody, again, it's either containment, pushing back. Like she never even hurt Mark when she had her outbursts against him, which is mixed rationally with the context to be had. And even though Mark does love her, there's a very obvious point that if it wasn't for Mark and a bunch of people, Adam Eve would have died a long time ago. She's just objectively not that strong, even with her weapons or making this Doom guy-ass suit, which is peak as fuck. She's not really like that. I'm gonna keep it a buck, and even within the show, like she's not in the same grounds as them. So yeah, like I think easily she's here. You could argue she'd be a lot more over, Angstrom, mainly just because of the fact that she's a lot more physical capable, and if it wasn't for contests like being pregnant and other shit, she probably would be better. But you could argue the battle for removal and possible physical stand that he could be better. But I think I'll give her benefit of the doubt to be like right here, right? When we talk about, presence of actual worthwhile of fighting and combatment. But yeah. Then you have the case of her and her actual fullest potential as being peak Dr. Manhattan, in the words of Robert Kirkman. Robert Kirkman obviously set limiters in play because not only of his limited sense of creativity and ways to balance her power and immerse her into stuff, and having obviously inverse rational nurse to take away her ability to be this and be that, there's every capability to rationally say in every regard that, simply put, that when she gets to her goddess form, she pretty much is pink alien next, can warp reality to her call, has way more usage of creativity, immortal, unstoppable, a built different, living fucking supernova for crazy capabilities, and can easily bring the heat of the sun of like energy to Viltrumites. So it is crazy. You have this big goblin kaiju. It's Godzilla SS form with this shawty monster girl, which is pretty much her turning into a way more big like gargoyle terror when she's a baby, and turns into this big ass, bigger than life case of monstrosity, this war of the monsters SS creature. But the thing is that her scaling is very mixed to say, not only because again he doesn't really have anything to really verify where she could understand her rationale. Because if we really stretch it, she'd probably just be a lot more higher, obviously, than Monster Girl. Top of Street to those shit, maybe even metahumans would easily mix the talk of trying to stretch battlefield removal or different containment and stuff to be there, or just tiring her out. It's very much there, right? Because she would have a limiter. But it's even a mixed argument for the fact that, simply put, Monster Girl in this form is an alternate dimension with ultimate, possibilities for what if, of not only capabilities, sorry for the yawn, I have some throat pause. I'm not over here recording this too early. Actually, good case of, you know what I'm saying, early, right, and ready for this. But I'm trying to full say, because that kind of sounded weird, was pretty much a multi-compile of multiple things, or a multi-like comp setting of perception of multiple people to say that every version of every alternate dimension and or universe is the same, because we've seen deliberately that's not the case, as there's people who have said in lore and design look like and seem like they would be a form of a good formidable Viltrumite, or say that they've killed their father, or they've done this or they've done that, but they never move the same way as them. All the dimensions are shown multiple times that if it's not the prime universe, aka like Invincible subsequent like 616, they're not as strong. So no matter if Conquest, Lucan, Craig, and Anissa feel like they could not fully contain this beast, which could mean anything. It's a very broad statement. You know, maybe they couldn't hold it in a cell on some fucking SCP shit. It's fucking SCP-682 breached out this mug and unleashed a great deal of havoc already in the background. It's going on a rampage. So presumably fighting it is just a fucking lost cause to actually possibly, presumably, take it out without killing it. So there's a lot of levels where you can stretch that. Like, if you really think it's that powerful, like it's over here able to outwork 4 of the strongest greater Viltrumite, shit, man. Like, you just keep going. You top of the verse, like, jokes aside, like, I'm just saying, like, it's not very strong, like, rationale to put her that much more greater, and I think just simply she's a very wacky form of, like, monster girl. That's a very what-if hypothetical that shouldn't really boast where she could actually be, especially where all others are putting it. Do you think she could ever be one of the stronger, more capable, more, you know, proficient fighters in time before her limiter goes out? So I think it's a very mixed thing to say. But again, moving on. We got Titan, who I think is only the bare minimum greater skill, like stronger than the general reanimate. He's pretty just whatever fodder, gets easily knocked around, barely does anything. The greater sense of fighting with the order is not really that strong. It's not anything greater standout capability of power, really reckon of something. And it's like the most like this flat line in every occasion of actual worth a lot of the time, because his, you know, body armor can easily get overpowered, overdone. He usually could get, you know, thrown around by Invincible. He's the most like subpar version of a reckon of like a Tombstone to Kingpin type person. In all the cases, Reanimate, even with a single one or multiple of like a higher caliber, could easily overpower and override him. These ones would be a lot more better because of their weaponry and experience and model. But next we have Big Battle Beast, a guy that I have a lot to go and say. The famed behemoth, slayer of multiple battlefields, an absolute dominator, a dual-wielding Theocules level of behemoth of unimaginable proportions, a beast of wicked capabilities, an absolute pillar of might, skill, and valor, a man that will make his glory known across the universe, the dual-wielding scourge of the twin galaxies, a ferocious warrior indeed, absolute goats. The thing is with Battle Beast is that a lot of time his mix how you perceive lower showcasings are a lot of mix of like contextual, from the fact that he's in disadvantaged positions, right? Of him fighting Viltrumites out in space, he doesn't have the same crazy mobility that he would naturally have as being the king of the galactic jungle. He, even as being, you know, a bit different, you know, D1 Black Air Force energy, you know, bandit, even then gets outdone by just getting jumped. He is ragdolling Thula. He's outdoing multiple people. A lot of the fodder in the mixture of the Viltrumite war. He has every capability to say that he was all around over. It was just the numbers and the disadvantage. He did get pushed away by this man Thrag, but when he came back to Thrag, more prepared, even ground, at equal advantage, right, to fight. He was willing to fight. With his weapons, bigly, he was running through multiple Ragnars, squidging them, executing them. He was out here going whole Spartacus, rinsing, racking on niggas when it come down to different like devastation and slaughter. And single-handedly, with his dual wield of a big-ass sword akin to Guts and a left hand of a great mace hammer or a mole or whatever you have in mind for him, he's a glorified demon. He just out here scrapping with everybody, full Godfreying on niggas. You heard? So the fact that he was able to run from multi-case of Ragnar, that someone like Thrag, even though he was getting jumped, he was getting dogpiled, he could rinse and repeat, body multi-case of the Ragnar possibly by himself and push through them, tame them. He bested them in multiple forms in combat. It still doesn't change the fact that Thrag, in every case of the way, was a guy that struggled a lot more with form of like Ragnar's at a even planet advantage and weren't like battle beasts thrown into space without the mobility and at a natural ground and fighting those different confines. Battle Beast still stood a lot more greater than in comparison to them, and even with his blades or not, him even having a little bit of a scrapping, even with the argument for Thrag being put down with having his guts literally peeling out, this man still was better. And then when he nerfed himself, he then still scrapped with this man for days. And even with this man Thrag having the physical advantage, resilient skin, flight, great a deal of experience in combatmanship, in planes of, multi-alternate adaptation, he went about still giving a great fierce battle, flamed hands like no other, and that battle showcased really in all truth why he is Battle Beast, a full-fledged, unstoppable, indomitable lust lion of great bloodshed that would never back down in the face of death. If I am to die, I am to die roaring, you know what I'm saying? He is a glorified dog for all different outskirts, a man wrecking every level of an absolute pure beast of unimaginable strength and absolute, I feel like the highest fame with no oversaturated glaze level of impetuous will to even with everything put against him to be able to scrap, lash, bite, and straight crack out the craziest means of absolute saber-toothed tiger straight to car wail on this nigga was just built different. Now, people like key issues and multiple people have their argument to think that Allen, some other people are over because they had better mixed tactical feats. Allen was able to easily rip through Viltrumites, push through them, got dog piled on. It was a little bit more better subsequently standing. And even though they had the same equal amount as a King Jump, it seemed like this man Battle Beast struggled a little bit more. But again, he doesn't have the same advantages. Battle Beast cannot fly. He can jump great heights. He's a very powerful, big dog, like I said. This man, again, is the scourge of the Twin Galaxies. He's at every level of routinely an absolute, full-fledged, decimator of multiple odds. But someone like Allen, as much of a brick shithouse of a fucking, Goliath, was just able to push past a lot of these things a lot more seeming easily because of the fact that obviously both being on similar strength gap, a different hail of being, similar, both titans out here and fighting. Something like Battle Beast easily, especially in the breakout thing, was dogging with the case of a big ass, big leap in power stand over the mix of the Viltrumites and is rinsing through multiple people way more easier and effective than in comparison this man Allen as well. And there's also the big thing about the explosion of this, big calamity effect that not only took both of them out, but in a different look that people go to say as a form of thing. And this is the case of obviously the explosion of Viltrum. This knocked out Battle Beast with the mixed very if he was in a mix of already great conflict, if he was knocked out by the multi-different spring of different shit, as the explosion took seeming like of a 3 compact kabloom that entirely warped the entire from the battle from being, a big multi-brawl, all for one type case of thing. These motherfuckers was Armageddon scrapping. It then went to a clusterfuck of everybody getting blown dang near away right by it. And even though, yes, Allen did wake up a lot more sooner than Battle Beast, it doesn't change the fact that Battle Beast, even then, when he was full ready to go about, was able to try to scrap with Thrag, obviously got flailed away like garbage, got sent flying across the fucking cosmos. That man was vacant from the story for a minute. But Battle Beast was still, again, showcasing as much capabilities to do what Allen could do to the same degree. So I think easily you could say Battle Beast is either stronger than this one, could be an argument to be greater stronger than this one, and depending on how you feel about Thrag's greater boasts of power and capabilities, he could be greater stronger, but I think it's really dependent. If he had no weapons, then I think it's an easy argument that he could be seen mixed stretch greater lower, or just like where I have him. With his weapons, though, I think in every category that he's a way greater stand. There's also even the fact that Allen didn't even know if he should step in, because Battle Beast was so dead even, Afro Samurai to Shigeharu, level case of matter of scaling, that he was just duking it out, straight dog fight, rawest as it could be, talking straight rucking with, every aspect of great gladiator fierceness. This man, Battle Beast, took a whole different lay of pain and was dishing it just as much. They was dead even. So again, even without weapons, both at their fullest capability, Battle Beast would still give as much of a profound hail of a fight like no other. He would still go to new lengths of, like, I'm talking absolute lion-o on this nigga Thrag in every capacity. They was having a Rocky versus Apollo Creed round 2 like fight, my nigga. It was entirely built different. But again, besides that, I think in every record of the way, in the rawest form, and the biggest rocking, you know what I'm saying, that could have came, that these guys easily are contingent. You can see either way, but I feel like I've made my point very heavily set in stone after all this talking to say why Battle Beast would in the end be stronger than Allen in almost every way, especially with weapons. So yeah. Next we have Big Best Tiger, who is easily a guy to be seen as one of the most, I feel like, tactically efficient practitioners, stylistically. Stratagems is one of the smartest cases, like battle IQ to their veteran people. Man's not even blind, it just offers more challenge. He's very skilled about different guns personally. He has multiple four different like attachments and bullets that actually can hurt metahumans and give surprising great case of like actual challenge to people, and is very, surgically adept. He's adept in multiple different stylistic means of marksmanship, gunsmanship, and he's very efficient in multiple different styles of fighting, and is a very valued member of the Guardians of the Globe. But I still think one-on-one without greater case of prep time and mixed very situational sense, because prep time is very in a hypothetical what if, and just stretching the bar of kind of like a inverse parody of the wacky perception of the idea that, a guy with prep time on a specific market claim as Batman, even with the arguments for reasonable rationale, could pretty much solo a great known of everybody that can come against him. It still doesn't change the fact that a lot of the time he's just physically not the same regard. I can see him maybe for the mix of weak spots in different situational sense, maybe in the Octopus, but I don't really think he's on that level to where he could most confidently beat him most of the time. And if he wasn't over here different like contextual means, he most likely would get squished. So I think that's best for Best Tiger, but I really do fuck with Best Tiger. Let's use mom. Random guy that mortal through into space, fucking, I don't know, fodder, right? You have Black Samson in his suit back in the day with the prime of the case of the Guardians of the Globe too early on. I think easily, you could put him like right here in greater regard of capability, even though he could easily be popped in the head by Best Tiger, but I think he's a lot more better. Black Samson is very mixed to say where he could greater be in power. He obviously pushed back Omnipotus. I think with this power at his highest gram scope of speed, and that's having a random withdrawal power, even though this power would most likely run out before he could fully use it. I feel like I did stretch a little bit where he could greater be, but I think you can definitely argue at least bare minimum, probably top of street tier / low soup for now. Black Samson with his powers back subsequently without the full like recharge and all that, I don't think it's that great or strong. I think, I'm gonna be honest, I think you could probably say he's above Octopus, but he's not really like that to keep it a buck. Then this brother, I forgot his name, but I've seen him doing a little bit of greater stand to some other people within the mix, not only, with conflicts on Earth, was a mixed different time member of the Guardians of the Globe or something else, fought in the Invincible War. I would probably say like around here, something like that. Probably put him above the plus. Big Brit, who I found a lot more love for as a character. I think even with him just being like the bare bones, like kind of like Captain America Super Soldier, his durability is cracked beyond compare. The dude is a fucking walking diamond shell, diamond head standing of like person. Man is a definition of invulnerable, akin to like Mr. Incredible. So I think that like mainly just from Best Tiger, but the mixed powers of like Black Samson in this suit could be a mixed thing, but I think he's like just a bare stone like capable person, especially with his tech and capabilities like that, is able to push past the case of like robots, different like robots. Guarantee if there was more, it probably would be a lot more of a pressure problem. But even with all the case of those robots, in comparison to others, he left the battle a lot more unscathed. With his son, with his wife, all that shit was outduking. So even though, yeah, with a lot more robots put up, over fight still, even with them. So I would like to say that even with that, him having deal. Sorry for the fucking yawn. Jeez, I'm trying to say in full. even with a great deal of disadvantage in multiple forms, be it in multiple fights or with the robots, he still proved ridiculously a resourceful, capable, highly of great case of not only experience and practitioner like no other, a certified one-man unit, you know what I'm saying? Even with the case of more robots to possibly defeat him, I still say that he would again be of great standing here. But in Bulletproof, with the Invincible outfit or not, with whatever makes like stretch of power difference, I think it's probably one of the more greater A powerful people, probably like top of the line of a lot of these different people, and that's like no stretch of imagination. And a lot of times it's like one of like the top 5 to like top 3 most strongest physically of the Guardians of the Globe. So like self-explanatory. Cecil thing. About this dude, he's supposed to be the Martian King. Hold on, let me get a good look. Seems like it, but don't know. Scaling. Conquest. Mean Vato, eh? Goon for violence. An absolute pillar of pillaging of innocence. A definement of every grand scope of what the definition is of a D1 crash out. A blacker force energy goon. A absolute epitome of what it means to be great A old man strength, an absolute demon. I love him. Love this look. Love the character. Love the case of Negan's voice acted with him, AK JP Morgan, right? Peakest case of not only Viltrumite arguably in grand scope, but he's a very weird mixed person to like argue in different scale. So like at bare minimum, right? You could think that because of the fact that Conquest, right, is a guy who has a different title and basically hailing of being a built different person. Nobody thought that this motherfucker could ever be defeated by Mark. Nobody has ever even heard of the capability for someone to kill Conquest. Conquest was ridiculously experienced. One, if not possibly the oldest Viltrumite of greater known at that time. It was a ridiculous person, feared Thrag, but everybody else feared him. He's an ultimate enforcer, ultimate colonizer, conqueror, dominator, never failed to assimilate a planet, is this grand case of dominator and ravager of worlds. He runs motherfuckers through like no other, is a whole build different, a claim of a dominating, undisputed case of fucking, you know, life wiper, of fucking walking natural disaster. Conquest came up peaking Thanos level height of straight brutal, ruthless, unimaginably debacle, you know what I'm saying, when it comes down to everything he was doing. This man, again, splintered Eve, thrashed this nigga Mark, made him look like a fucking play dummy, flailed him around like a motherfucking monkey, dominated him in every capacity, and he was diabolical in every degree of what he was doing. An absolute pillar of menace, an absolute dog that would just slay multiple over. He was a fucking like just toppler. Man was a great A gruesome demon that would entirely show curse in every fashion, in every case of the way, that he was single-handedly beyond the comprehension of anybody or anything that came his way. The only reason he ever lost was because of his arrogance, being a spectator in his own fight, contextual means of getting, you know, hit from the back with an ultra powerful blast by the case of someone like Eve, him running out of breath and the wind knocked out of him by getting caught lacking by this man Mark from the back and getting choked out, and mainly for the hardest core of will and mixed stretch of like greater plot induced mixed talk of relevance for the matter of like, again, even though Mark's body is heavy durable to take all those confines of blows, him never being able to push him off because Mark's grip was just that strong, pause, right? He was just able to full choke this nigga out in heavy case of just wipe his entire case of chance of doing anything with strangling him. And the fact that Mark was again able to do that is such a, again, a great argument for hella build different resolve, heavy build different means of like will, adrenaline, and naturally in every exertment of a greater like bloodlusted means, because he was trying to hurt Oliver and he wanted to stop him from possibly hurting Oliver, and Big Lee for possibly retribution for what he did to Eve in heavy degree. I mean, Conquest is one of the biggest possible opposition to this man Mark because of how he did Eve dirty. It has the biggest means of hate to him, especially how much of a D1 shit talker that Conquest is. So every aspect of this man Conquest, if it wasn't for situational means, heavy means of arrogance, and him being a whole fucking dunce to the greater confines of what needed to be had, and being too much of a Eugene in a fight overly sadistic Vato, he would actually flatline and entirely just, cratered into most people, you know what I'm saying? But, the Doomfist of Invincible like shit, he, even with that, was so demonstrably stronger that some people think, like, besides, like, these mixed contexts, he might actually just be, like, top of the line with niggas. But I would say there's every capability to say that some people could defeat him. I said people like Craig, Anissa, that could be over, not only because of rank, but the different feats that they did in comparison. If you really think Mark, at a time later, way beyond that fight, I'm talking coursing way beyond Compendium 2 to Compendium 3 and the different ties, different arcs and issues, that Mark, right, single-handedly was every argument to say, even though not fully greater stronger than Conquest, but was easily like mixed relative to him, that someone like Anissa is easily on those same bars, meaning that possibly Anissa could be in greater sense stronger than this man Allen, or Allen could be a little bit more of a challenge for him. And I think that's all reasonable, especially because of how they were able to stand to mixed Thrag, even though Conquest was afraid of Thrag. Craig was mixed possibly willing to actually stand up against him, or even arguably rush after and disobey him in front of him. So I think there's a little level with the fact that Conquest is very much a, kind of low in standing of actual interpretation, you know what I'm saying? How much more of dummy demonstrous, like monumentous of a like bigger threat he is. Because you have to understand, even though Conquest is very strong and undeniably is a peak powerhouse, his hubris, his personality could easily have him fall back and fail to somebody who is way beyond him, underestimating people, not understanding the greater severity of things. Even though he came back not to underestimate, he arguably was so much more stronger that if he would have actually moved greater and didn't try to savor the moment and overly drawn out things and failed because it was over knack for the suffering of others, right? aka being an absolute just uncomparable terror, he would have actually killed these people. So I think you just have to really accept the fact that he has a low end possible way of showcasings. He kind of might be what people might modernly say a fraud because he didn't really put that much worth. And Conquest, no matter how strong he is, his personality will always be his failing. But I think, again, this is a fine place. So you could try to put him higher. But I think Allen and Battle Beast, especially with weapons, are just of a higher standing, especially even like way older Allen. So I think you just have to accept that that's just where the grounds of this conversation is. But then we have Big Marcus, aka the son of Mark Grayson, between him and Anissa. Marcus is very weird to mix, like, define and properly scale. So Marcus, right, obviously the second son of this man, right, in comparison to possibly fight somebody in greater form, way stronger than him, that would go about the case of seeming like he was doing something, but wasn't actually doing anything of greater form, to actually say he was doing something of greater distinctful form. But the difference is in comparison with, like, Invincible, with the idea of, like, father versus son, conflict between family, all that, as he's the second child of Mark Grayson, because Mark Grayson doesn't have, like, obviously two sons. But I'm saying he's the second son with, somebody to go about fighting or having different conflict in different form with their father, in the case of Invincible, iconically between Nolan and Invincible, and maybe you could search other occasions. But he, as the case of the second form of legacy of this man Mark, definitely holds great A potential to do great things, because he's the son of two very great A powerful people, a high Viltrumite elite, and a very, even though young standing, not the most greater detail, stronger Mark, is every aspect of the way of high great A potential, especially because of that greater ingrain of high blood unique mixture of human DNA. So he can be, by every argument of that as a character, very powerful. But not just going off the web of mixed canon, you know what I'm saying, possibly in a hypothetical continuance of the story, and maybe even possibly future evolved, like, adaptation of whenever we get to the end of the series for the show. And, like, I don't know, fucking season 8, season 10, season 13, whatever the fuck when that happens, right? Marcus, though, doesn't really have any greater showcase. Obviously, he's scrapped with this man, Mark, but it's very mixed on whatever the parameters of this fight was. Was it a full-grown out fight? Was it bloodlust? And Mark only seemed to be a little bit mildly straight to bruise, and we don't know if Mark was holding back realistically. He would hold back against his family. He's never tried to fully go out against his family, except when this man, Nolan, revealed his true plan for the case of, Earth. And in a good sense, right, you have someone like this man, Marcus, who doesn't really have, again, really any credentials to say in comparison to scaling to Mark, that he was even the most strong in mind to even fight him because of mixed confliction that was given. I don't know if he had to be greater beaten. He seemed a lot more worn out than his father. He had a lot more visible days on him than his father. So I think in the end, if you hire Stretch, this man Marcus could be greater since this because he did a lot more seeming than Allen, who got seemingly easily like fathered and put in his place and way under him. You can search the bar saying like how I thought him to be reasonably stronger than his mom at least, right? Maybe greater, stronger than Conquest, doing all this shit, right? But there's every level to say that he's a very just mixed person, being too powerful / weak to scale. He does have greater feats, and his skill to Mark is mixed. And even the same thing with like a Nissa or anyone being, over Conquest. It's against a Mark that has very mixed, more contextual reason to say he won. And in that fight, he would have arguably just had a draw with this man Conquest because he would have died. Same thing with even that, which I'm gonna get to that. Where he would have just died from not only entirely loss of his entire whole stomach. I mean, this man Conco blitzed his entire left hand and entirely railed through his fucking ribs and blitzed the case of his fucking guts open with his right hand, jamming his shit. He fully Uzo-Ram the fuck out of him. So there's every level of the fact that Marcus never, especially even Marcus right now, never really been on them levels is because he can rock with them. He's barely even that scope, especially with the argument that he had to get pulled and dragged to even commence within the battle. You know what I'm saying? He gets some different foes around to even possibly survive. He got thrown around by Thrag. Conquest thought he was a waste man, pushed him aside, and even had to get dragged in the mix of the actual full trio imploding blitzing explosion of Viltrum. So yeah, if you ask me, I would say that Mark is kind of that level where we really need greater showcasings. But yeah, you have one of these like kaiju beings. I mean, in the case of the comics, right, this thing got instantly took in that commission. And so if you want to say just because I was rampaging most of the kaijus consistently, you could easily say like they're above a great deal of the rest because they're ridiculously powerful. But I couldn't really say. Dark Blood doesn't do anything. Darkwing 1, and put in the case of the power such we can scale. Darkwing 2 didn't do so much elaborately different. Obviously, Mark, aka Invincible, could feel those punches. I don't think he's so much greater A capable. I think I'll just put him at a higher sense standing there. Obviously, there's battle for removal with the Shadowverse, but I think a lot of times he's just a lot more a physical, capable, adept person in her stylistic means, even as a fighter or something of that sort. But his ain't didn't really scoff at. I don't know what the fuck this is. I think this might be like some opposite version of like what William or something. I don't know. You have the case for Debbie Grayson, most profound woman in the universe, face up, playing around. Random dog adversary, like a boomerang. Dinosaurus, though, is a very interesting beast. An absolute, undeniably so, crazed animal. Motherfucker is basically an amalgamation of a V-Rex evolved absolute diabolical scrapper with a mix of like augmentation. I've grown to have a lot more intrigued and beloved recall to Dinosaurus, not only in taking in of what he is, pure sadistic possible acts and face value. He's pure intelligence in the most radical form, a radical, callous philosopher, hyper optics, callous individual, but is very strong. I think Dinosaurus is easily, generally, like, up here. Now, his mixed qualifications, right, being real on these levels is mainly with the regards that Dinosaurus is very powerful, right, and he was over a greater sense of possibly Mark of a time. I think him really being one of these like Viltrumite levels is not really strong, but I think he's easily like high metahuman because Mark generally, even though he did knock him back once out of his form, there's a mixed argument of being caught off guard so much and actually in full fling fight, stronger evolve, which is version of, Dinosaur is supposed to be. He was way beyond the case of what Mark did. Even though he did not kill him, there's every capability that he could have spludged his head open, catch his head like a football, and just blast it. You know what I'm saying? It's a fucking mush, right? This dude literally multiple times shrugged off Mark, knocked him out, and outbucked and squished this nigga multiple times open. Could have easily killed him. He was able to survive having his jaw ripped open. He was able to have his teeth entirely shattered, jaw broke, multiple instances, and still stood. Now, they're very relative, and maybe without the mixed contextual boards of shit and other confines of that, maybe the brother could have went about, being defeated. It's very relative, but I think bare minimum type of metahuman to like low of cosmic threat / world nightmare is very valid. I think I actually put him here, but yeah, he's very fucking powerful. One of the most intelligent niggas in the verse, even with the most like wild, these kaiju beings. Like the kaiju should like be easy like higher end than a lot of people, but they're very like mixed to really say in the greater regard of like what they can most consistently be. They're easily very powerful. Then you have this steroid junkie that they didn't have anything really to greater like say. Then you have Doc Seismic just in general, who's more or less like of an inconvenience. I probably would give him the best benefit of the doubt to say like probably might be top of fodder, because a lot of his shit would only push some of these people back. They took in blows and been like swapped away or took in this greater shit. They're way more durable, they're way more capable. And like one greater shot and without a lot of the contextual things, who's just a old man, right, that doesn't really do anything of greater record of actual capability. And what in the case of his earthbender fucking bracelets, the dude doesn't do anything of real worth. He's just whatever. Then him as the volcanic deity almost subsequently that he is, and mixed tandem with his wife, because I don't know if his wife is with us. Them together, I'd say they've given like a good, decent, great sentiment of like challenge to a great one of the heroes. But I would bet money, you don't even know, I don't know if Bulletproof greater struggled, that Bulletproof probably would be undeniably so a lot more stronger. You can maybe put them a lot more higher, but I think I would put him there. Donald didn't probably do anything of greater detail, outstanding work. I'll probably say you could give him at least the bare minimum that he has some great surprising tech, is a whole droid, can pull some Eva shit if he wanted to. How many y'all niggas watch Wally and some shit? But other than this version of him, with this the case of him being ahead in his high speed, it's pulling the same thing, just eventual, greater, highly damaged and, put through hell version of him. Sorry for that, but yeah, simple as that. Then you have Chupacabra. I remember him being so outstandingly built different. He's very agile, very mobile, and no racial really can pull some Rey Mysterio in the activities of what he does. Is basically like the affair of the team, right? Because I'm really doing that as a comic. The man is very crazy adept in movement, parkourist, stylistically efficient, and can pull a lot of crazy fishing maneuvers to dominate and decisively best people. A very saddening, endearing, intriguing character with a lot of things to be had. But I think most consistently that he would just be strongly mixed, either contingent with like Best Tiger to over. I don't think he's really that much more great. I think I would probably bet on him being there, to be honest. Elephant Man, right? Absolute fucking fodder, right? Nothing of greater like relevance of character, right? Embrace without a lot of different like deceptive means and just taking over people's bodies. She's not really a fighter. She got easily just erased by the case of Seth's brother, so put her there. Don't know what the fuck that is. Wasteman, some random variant of Mark getting brutalized, right? Because Invincible variants, a lot of it could be easily 2 power / weak to scale. So this is where we just like throw a lot of them in there. Drop kick and whatever punch up, whatever his name is, or another grandstand. I probably would bet biggest sense of like fodder probably might be more higher than FMA, even though they get pushed around a lot more easily than in comparison to him. So yeah, Furnace, I just put Piers is the bare minimum fodders, some Flaxen, Amber's ex-boyfriend. Go Craig, General of the Viltrumites, second in command of this man. Thrive, very capable, the biggest arguable harem and hell of multi-billion claim baby daddy that actually is shit face ass. Viltrumite, a little optic visor as well. Barber of Thrag, don't at me. Gotta go to, not gonna lie, but I think he'd just be of a higher standing than like obviously Thula, but isn't on the same claim of like Anissa being one of these more real riled up, ready to fight, very dog up, type people. Even though look at Tristan, he's no slouch. He's a very great combat expert, highly experienced, was a general of the greater grand scope Voltrum Empire, and is very highly, combatant, but isn't anything to really scoff at. The Giant doesn't really have any real variable, greater standing. Like I said, the full come my throat. Most precise to say is I'm glad I've been a little more, most concise and congruent with this than possibly what I would expect without having doing this in a minute. But to most, to finally, speak with all this being said, I'm just saying that the Red Giant doesn't have a great form of big variable multi-tail of actually, scaling and maybe possible line of where you could think could be too powerful / weak to scale, but a lot of the different variety of what actually could rationalize the most congruent, defined placement for him. I feel like he's just a guy that's more like a stepping stone to show how hard you can hit. He's more literally durable than anything else, and with his kid mind and not really being anything extra like actual power, I would say that he's not really a good formidable challenge or anything of greater like big proud boast. Now, this you don't have this capability for this being like this man Rex, big Hulk buster, big fucking Mega Mind suit, but we're gonna try to fight a lot of the Viltrumites in the case of the second Viltrumite war, right? They try to even fight Thrag. And it's going to let us such boast that within his robot suit, he's easily a great big ton, like over a lot. The robot himself casually is not really on the level of a lot of a greater case of people without prep time, and even with a great deal of like a multi-influx of like legioning on people, hyper jumping people. I think I can give him the bare minimum to say that like this suit is probably like maybe at the highest end of metahumans, but I wouldn't actually put him a lot more higher. And I would say that goes for most different occasions of the robot suits, even if they're not really on the greater case level of shit. I probably would put, this robot suit better than like most different regard of these people, but not anything so much more better and stronger in comparison. Is because of the fact of how it was used as from the Shokan suit. Is the bodyguard of Mr. Lou. He's very strong, but there's nothing to greater like say about him physically. Green Ghost, another case person you could put in case of like 2 weeks of powerful to scale, right? If you know what that is, man, randomly got cracked by Mark. This, I don't know who the hell this is. Got a case of different Lizard League people, relevant, immoral, overestimated his greater stand, even though don't get it twisted, he's of some decent capability. He's in the grand large just a very weak, fodderous person, and his make trying to stand to anybody with similar levels of like Viltrumite strength is very low. I think even with that though, he's easily seen to be the strongest. Bulletproof is probably like only mixed contingent to him, but he's really not that strong. I only give him the argument of being a lot more stronger on this level. He really shouldn't be of those higher, greater sense of like metahumans, to be honest. And Moore's just really not like that, so he doesn't have the durability to really contend with these people if he has like physical mixed whatever strength you want to say in comparison. Then Big Ma Grayson, an underrated, overhated, hyper case of glazed, dick-rided character. But Ma Grayson, the famed grandson of the great Ogle, son of the great Nolan, the profound woman of Debbie Grayson, husband to the famed Adam Eve, the Pink Ruby, father of Tara Grayson, and Marcus Grayson, the pillar of grandstand will, hope, and humanity of Invincible, as the famed great emperor of the new Viltrumite Empire. Hail the great fame Mark the Goat Grayson. With this being said, he obviously, from this case of the 500-year time skip, should be, in the case of his showcasings, over everybody easily here. Starting Allen and your mixed contingent between Battle Beast to him in every league of the way, and every scuba capability, would very much, to me, platitude this dude multiple times in speaking on a hyper case of different greater standing than any one of these people. He's of a whole different plethora of not only most likely case of knowledge, skill, adeptment, and it's even more of a form of relative to possibly even rocking with Thrag to any decent boast and matter, and do send a multi-different run of Viltrumites could never even hold, and was the greatest possible threat to Thrag, even mixed different balls and different occasions, different standing, than even his father trying to rock and bop and sock and lock with him. I would say in every degree that proves that Mark, at this point, as being the supreme, highest grand emperor of the Viltrumites, has such a new heights that not even Thrag or even the great Ogle could ever comprehend. So to me, that recently makes him that. There's a lot of arguments for Mark, not only because he doesn't really show too much to really conclude that he's different. Thrag for a long time in the series was just a whole different like bar and like stamp of like the greatest of all. He was bred, groomed, and trained to be the strongest, the general Zod of the race, the Kultum Khan, the fucking Zeus will still just the magnum opus of power, value and strength above all else. Big dog. But Mark has fully went to new heights, I feel like, of reasonably valuing all those things and taking it to a whole different mark, and no pun intended, just to me very much reckons that greater stand. Next we have Mark post-Conquest fight, if this is supposed to be him, it makes possible standing of Conquest fight, being like bloodlusted absolute hell trying to fight. I think if anything, you should probably just make Mark be easily record of relative to maybe say he could be over Craig, but not so much over, and just more or less be relative. Because again, if it wasn't for it makes bloodlusted a situational stand, the same events that would have happened, you know what I'm saying, in the end with him, possibly, you know, going about facing Conquest up in space, you know, would have went about happening on Earth or whatever case of planet in the same sense. Because I'm saying in the sense that the same events that happen on Earth in comparison will come about facing Conquest again, or any aspect of, you know what I'm saying, facing him in the area and playing where they're both at the advantage. There's no sneaking him, there's no catching him lacking, there's no knocking the wind out of him, and then holstering his neck like a motherfucking, I don't know, fucking like whole bag of potatoes and crunching on him to the point where he can't breathe. Now this is going to be marked like a great deal mixed post whatever argument with this look being of the same style like before he fought Conquest, even like pre-Greater, and I think this mark is Bearman from his mixed stand to like, you know, Dinosaurus here to mix argument mainly because he could never understand the different like unique qualities of like possible, you know, contingencies within robot suit and all that. Even if we want to say greater prep time, I would like to say that, you know, he could still overhaul and defeat it, but never facing that to that level of higher frequency, right? And even the case of like facing it before, still very much putting the guy out of commission with attacking his equilibrium and very sensitive point of like ear and pretty much, you know, draining this motherfucker's ears dry fucking blood. I mean, the pain gotta be a whole different level of agonizing. The motherfucker got put through the most unimaginable excruciating pain to where the motherfucker's entire cranium is ringing like a fucking Taco Bell meme. The man's getting a whole different level of CTE induced. So yeah, like I would say probably on physical regard should be better. Maybe in like hex mixed tactical awareness and efficiency he should be better. But to most fights I say that that version of Mark isn't that much more stronger than what he eventually would train or be greater capable to do, like this Mark post the fight or doing anything of that same degree that you would think aka Invincible War mixed Mark. Now this Mark, you know, you just want to say whatever, this could be like an early version of Mark, this could be a Mark a lot more greater. I like to argue that this is a version of Mark where within the training makes different correspondence to different things, and or a possible Mark like pre-mixed fighting Conquest, right, in the case of the suit and all that. I probably would give every argument he could be stronger than the mix of not only this man Conquest but be up here, you know. But I think I easily would title him in great standing right there, right, this version of Mark. Then this Mark, right, I'll say for this version of Mark that obviously as the Emperor, right, he just would be of a higher stand, and even with the case of recuperation, reflux of greater power, and what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger, survival of the fittest, getting to a new record hold of, you know what I'm saying, I got that dog in me, you know, I Mark of like a whole different level of power stand in the Viltrumite Empire, not only being of the rightful successor and grandson to the Great Argul, the narrative entail, or just the fact that at this point, even though he was the only most strongest higher end Viltrumite, he still, you know, repped in the grand scope a guy that, you know what I'm saying, nobody could ever, you know, defeat, nobody could ever put down, you know. The dude was still very powerful, and Mark really rectified the idea that I walk niggas down, Grayson. I would probably say that he can at least be whatever verifiable, like, scalable to this, but I wouldn't really say he's really on those levels most concretely, so because of the context of Mark, which is a big thing, that if it wasn't for the sun, it wasn't for all this shit going around, Drag obviously makes holding back, drawing out the scenario, it makes it the case of Omni-Man going about running up on him and catching him lacking in the mix, and it makes jumping, and obviously him getting a suit from Robot to go about drawing out the case of the battle and all that, and the weakened skin and more openings for possible, you know what I'm saying, exploitation of this man Thrak, aka having a lot more different standing of advantage, outdone and outbang with the case of this man Thrag. This man, Mark, would be in every record of the way argued to be weaker, and it's only when after a great deal of time and sufficient recuperation of possibly, you know what I'm saying, his means of training prowess, argument for being the highest degree of person, way beyond the comprehension of anyone else, and as the, you know, supreme grand ruler of the Viltrumites, being this, you know, high staple, like pedestal, high grand, you know, overlooking person, you know, undeniably so, pretty much Superman almost seeming grand hail, a powerhouse. Would he possibly be stronger? But just as being the new elected, you know what I'm saying, Emperor, right, with clean, sleek drip, I think he stands very of great stand, you know what I'm saying, right, as being the case of a, you know, again, peak person of power. But he still has every argument to be just on the same level as this. I don't really feel like he consistently be on those greater levels, right? But then you have Marcus of the early time, who's just easily a weaker stand, like probably like started almost everyone else in a greater deal. This is the version of Mark where you could say, because early on he probably wouldn't be of greater strength, and maybe you could say he's just a little bit of a greater early marker, right, with stake over like being actually of some greater power, even if he's of like the weakest bunch, because obviously Mark, even with the case of being not as experienced, not as strong, a lot of people can now greater hurt him, stand to him, bang with him. And he's just multiple times consistently out of a lot of the lines of even like comprehension for a lot of niggas. So yeah. You have like Exploit, what the fuck his name is, that teleports around this man Titan. Your Pandroid, who's a very interesting character that I really wish could see a lot more of, but you know, glorious sacrifice in the end, very noteworthy hero. As far as technology and what you can pull, and very high tech, advanced, nanomachinic, transformer type person, that I would say that she actually could be very much up here. I think that with all her tech, her smarts, her reactability, being able to stand to any matter, get her power, not be entirely combusted, and make a lot of like actual multiple numeral adjustments and adaptable maneuvers and different testament of being a very capable person, being basically the cyborg of the verse. I think she's up there. Kaboomerang, not too great or impressive. I think the agility of someone like Chupacabra could just be way beyond him, but he does have some great usage of, you know, boomerangs. Is pretty much Captain Boomerang, but if he was on the case of the good side, yeah, Duplicate. Nothing too good or special. All the case of duplicating and just mainly making a army out of herself and being out of the league of a lot of different people and mixtures into her, you know, final state of affairs of duplicating is putting apart. She really a lot of time is just like a multi, like whatever form of like boast, click of like different, you know, just bodies at people until they override them with, even though yes, superhuman capabilities and standing, it's just more or less getting dog power and overwhelm heavy and wrenching on like their entire softboards and just getting out pressure. But I think with everything that's been shown, she really only could outdo these people by numbers, but something like Octopus and the rest of these people would be too strong, multi-case like experience, and or just having the better capabilities to outdo her, and she can never hurt these people, especially because a lot of them subsequently have more ground of like the general peak human to even like just bare bones durability. She could just overrun and just dog power on. Kid Thor was able to decently push back this man Mark, and with his hammer and the magic and all that stuff, I like to say is one of the more admirable strong people. Probably say even like with the weakness of losing his hammer and all that, right? In fairness, I think that he would still be pretty fucking powerful. Yeah, about that. Yeah, his Monster Girl and everybody else is too durable. Right? I think he could slam dunk and body a lot of people. The kill cannon is like absolute fodder. The dude does nothing of real relevance at all in the grand scope. I don't even argue that Furnace mixed back could be over for him, but I'll just put him like that. Right? I don't know. This shawty is about her King Immortal. They say he didn't really seem to get that much boast like overpowered since then. You have King Lizard of the case of Knockout, who I think everything that she's shown, even though being very great, since like capable as a fighter, you know, that would probably only be so much more sufficiently in a different regard, but she easily could be like put down by boys, different mixed like fair shit, and she's powerful. She has their punching capabilities, and I don't know her greater lore, how she's just able to be rocking some boxing gloves and just pull a little Mac on niggas. But I think she hasn't really showed much consistency. They put her somewhere. But the fact that she's able to stand with Kid Thor, be on the Guardians of the Globe, all that, I think I would give her like the bare minimum to be like right here. I think that's a fair assessment of her capabilities. Right? And this dude from Lizard League, big brute Bane type nigga. It's mainly because it's how overpoweredly busted strong he is, but I think he would just stop there, as everyone else would be of a whole different thing. And if it wasn't for his hubris and lucky play of things, and just trying to go and play with this man, Rex, and overly, playing hubris of him, right? That wouldn't have happened. And this is a future version of him, same type of thing, right? This is, right? In the case of Discount Electro, for just barely being able to hurt this man Mark and doing some other shit, probably a greater means of like mixed fodder, but the man is not anything too big special, right? Le Bruiser, a cool little puppy, little dog, French speedster like form of like dog with enhancements, and there's a very interesting form of like companion to say the least, kind of like the subsequent animal like fly off the handles creature of like the group, Rocket Raccoon almost even boast, Bill Beefy Boy, right? I would say that just because of his speed and the fact that he can hurt and actually injure greater beings, this is no normal dog, that he probably would be higher greater than everyone else, but easily showing different like tactical precision and equipment and other stuff like that, probably would get put down by like Best Tiger and shit. They mixed in. This is the second Aquarius, Nova Object scaling. There's some like the random like Invincible variants, from Reaniman, be there. There's Elite Goons, nothing there. All these variants, they're very mixed to say where they could actually be in like power. Lucan, I would say, I was obviously being a Viltrumite, being way more stronger, way more experienced, way more capable. Even though he's seen as like one of the greater, like weaker people, he was at least of some greater standing to actually say he was in line with different shit. He was obviously beyond the comprehension of this man Mark. For being catch lacking, was actually able to snap the back of this man Omni-Man. And I like to say that he at least was of like a higher merit of shit. I don't think he's as in greater same specialty as these people, but the fact that he was able to do a little bit more than Thula in the fight and do this and do that, I could see him being higher, like I said before, possibly my last tiers. But I think if anything, like he'd better be top of like metahuman, at least bare minimum of what he could actually foreshow different shit, right? You have the case of this man Machine Head, dude, Volcanic Brother, the fucking Magmamites, or the fuck. The Mist Brother that was doing barely really anything of like greater supply of something, able to project his armor out in a very interesting like form, but I couldn't really tell you where that most commonly scale. Kid Marcus has really no greater scaling to you, okay, being just a random showcasing of like a sumo, like the fact that even though yes he did bang out with some people, he showcased to be an admirable new coming of ally. The dude just pulled a like pseudo Superboy and rather just show greater like physical magnitude than other people, but didn't really do anything else. And I wouldn't presume him to have a greater sense of scale akin to like Kid Oliver, aka Kid Omni-Man. But if you really want to stretch the greater boast of where he could be and like the fact that he surprised them, you could like say, to be honest, like he could actually just be stronger than like this whole tier. But I think we're just gonna put him in there like with his older self. The same thing with like Marcus in general, a really known greater case of scaling and everything to be had than another case of Invincible variant. You said Martyr Twins, I think is this one whole form person that's they're like fodder, right? A lot of the time they're different planet, but they are easily physically strong, and I would probably say by themselves they would go a good deal beyond most of these different standing of people, but they're not too much crazy. They could be overwhelmed by the case of Duplicate, even though they might be greater physically stronger. But I think possibly them together against all these cases of Duplicates, they could just pull the same thing this guy would do. It's not that strong physically. They're more scientists and actual, brutes. I forgot his name, but the brother that was a big part of trying to persevere, be it like ironclad Iron Kid being pretty much a stone version of Colossus with his body. Now he did get caught lacking by form of acts we're trying to go about, form of sacrifice and trying to save this man. Chupacabra, I'm sorry to be saying caught lacking, but the back is the most convenient word, but it is true that he was caught by surprise, got clapped with an axe, got whole fucking huntressed in this mug, got whole berserkered, and the dude died. But he was multiple times shown that even though he was getting pushed back, that he was of greater durability. His family that had the same powers as him reasonably reckoned up from his strength that someone like Chupacabra couldn't understand. And again, he risked his life for this man. Chupacabra gave his life for him. The dude probably, bare minimum, should be here, maybe push others, because of how much of a greater physical standing he was. But I don't know if he was that ridiculously strong, because some other people did more. I think he's a very, iffy to scale person. This guy, very, situational shit. Mr. Lou by himself is nothing, but the dragon is something else. Now, it's a mixed thing. If the dragon is being controlled by Mr. Lou, or it's the dragon, like this mystical, fifth-dimensional, crazed case of mystical motherfucker, Omni-Man was only able to defeat him by going about getting the body of Mr. Lou. He was ridiculously powerful for Mark. He was every capability of ridiculous to fight, and this is something that Mark could never even go about trying to scrap with. Man literally got shit out by the dragon and didn't do nothing. And even like I said, the scope of the very contextual means of Mark and everything here, I think this dragon is so ridiculous that you could stretch the fact that he would be all the way up here. I think a lot of the time, most ton for ton, if you want to say they can never kill this dragon, it would be more physically dominant in this dragon, or would even kill multiple times because it's immortal. You can't actually truly in grand scope kill this dragon. Hypothetically, it's way beyond fucking mortal comprehension, even with these fucking demigods shit. I think in every standing that in truth, this dragon, right, is somebody that would be tons of times over a lot of the greater baseline, and only mixed bag again if it was with Lou's body or not, because the more stronger, physically dominant versions of these people could really stand against him. I probably would assume, right, that this version of Mark, a way more stronger case of one, would probably be the best chance, but you could easily argue right up here, all this shit. It's a very mixed thing. I probably would just assume to best say that you could go too powerful / weak to scale, even though it's very fucking powerful. It didn't really show what end all be all Sin Power is, and obviously I haven't placed Omni-Man yet. I think in the grand scope that being up there probably is the most concrete to really say. Then we have the Sun Monster Grid, where there's two Monster Grids, a form of representation of Monster Grid monster form. Suppose that Sun Note was very contingent to her, so it'd be back the same thing, but I would say arguably with different goal for more killer thing, especially possibly with armor and all that, Mozo or Zana, however you say his name, right, would be mixed bag a lot more over than mixed bag his father / mother, but I think Bearman that's consistent, because there's a lot of confliction and not wanting to hurt the case of, her child and all that. That's the only reason why. So, yeah. And you have the case of Multipaw, who should just be a greater, more vicious version of the case of his sister. There you go. See the person. Soon, because it appears that she's about to die. But yeah, the fact that is Kid Omni-Man, Oliver, character who had a lot of great film potential. If you don't understand what the potential course of way that it did, I do feel like there was a lot more possibly interesting things to possibly go about with his character, and I do still feel like he was really used. It's unfortunate that we couldn't see a greater intrigue into his character, even the legacy of his sons, because he actually has children. I wonder again how the show is going to take him. I'm hoping that he has done better in the show in some aspect. I don't think he's a terrible character or anything. I just feel like he could have a lot more intrigue potential. But for how strong something like Kid Omni-Man was and how he did shit, I feel like he's just top of the line. Remember, strong. Obviously, the Maulers are greater fodder to low soup, but I think he was so above the rest in what he could do that you could easily say that the motherfucker's at least bare minimum right here maybe, but he could be way more stronger. But I think Kid Omni-Man, he's just a little bit too iffy to scale to even having scaling, that you could easily put him here. I think in the end, with all the case of these people, not only am I going to go and switch to something else, the full go about finishing. And that's not in the case of recording, but just more or less in the case of position where I'm at. But you have the case of older Oliver, Valkyrie scale, right? I'm going to put his team play somewhere else. Just makes whatever makes older Oliver doesn't have any actual verifiable scaling besides maybe competing on mixed similar speed to mixed scaling of this man. Mark obviously was great at rusty and not doing shit. It makes it holding back. Oliver's a lot more used to these case of wild shit. But Teen Oliver, I like to go ahead and say it's the same kind of mixed thing. He wasn't in the same actual power as most people, but I'm a little more confident to say that as a team, he's a lot more of a capable, build different person. And I'll put him least bare minimum, even if he's not truly on the same level as his older brothers, which gives a lot of context, holding back, doing this, doing that. I'll be confident to put him here, right? This bare minimum scaling over those different versions of people doing that. Older Oliver, I think again the same standing. Maybe he could be a lot more in greater possible hell strength in the case of his, younger teen self, but not so much different. He would just be a little robot, for instance, for even able trying to do anything to thrive, even if it's more of being a waste bag, because he did get entirely fathered there. Then Big Omni-Man, the great Nolan, the famed iconic life wiper, dominator, bodyer of multiple different odds, the greatest arguable at one point soldier of the Viltrumite Empire. The dude was just built different in multiple regards, in multiple forms. The dude was just dominating on every different scope of the way. Nolan is a beast, right? But this version of him, a big pose different tale of him being Omni-Man to the case of the eventual Emperor, right? I think that he was a great whole different lane of power. He fought great in the Viltrumite War. They get involved, but the dude was just demonstrably bodying of multiple different people. He was an absolute glorified tank. D1 level of a bringer of hands, was A1 support and vanguard at the same time, and was able to dish out multiple cans of whoop ass on people. The guy was rocking with multiple different people, a different, multi-resume, and different feats and statements of being a glorified case of ridiculous form of pit for pit person. He would be stronger than most different boards of elite greater tail Viltrumites, and I think easily at this point, he's very constituent in this and how you feel about different planes of their power, but because of his position, a different height, understand was at one point, besides Conquest as Enforcer, possibly the, in grand scope, greatest Viltrumite soldier, an absolute highest pale in comparison to people with the blood of the great Argle pouring through his veins like straight motherfucking electricity. He had that tiger level of precision and grade A means of guarantee Black Air Force energy to be displayed. You know what I'm saying? But as an Emperor with the mixed argument contingent to feel possibly could actually best Conquest with me in the grand scope. How you feel about this man? Allen real stronger than Conquest. At an Emperor's point, he could be better than Allen because obviously Allen was all around way more superior than this man. Omni-Man, I think he's still very contingent. I think it's mainly if Conquest pulls his big fucking foo-la-la and pulls a goofy-ass level of just fucking crazy unk. I think in the grand scope, Big Grandpa Nolan would in the end be a lot more superior and could qualify right here. Big contingent with his son, but his son did a lot more effectively better in comparison, as Nolan a lot of times was just getting bonked back, getting heavily pressured, and absolutely walked down by Thrag. Obviously, he had his different occasions of exerting some different force, but his fist, by just the sheer clean fade of this nigga Thrag, akin to an iron sleek helmet, my nigga, got absolutely juggernaut cruise through the chest and split down the middle, entirely wrecked right then and there. His death almost had me in tears, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, he's very much up there. Omnipotence is a very glorified kind of wonky thing. If you research his greater power, he could be generally the most powerful, or he could just upscale everybody else in the verse. But I think he was consistent with his ridiculous energy absorption, crazy different scale of different shit, the life wiper to universe purge, and a lot of just more statements heavy things kind of put him in the same regard that he could easily be too powerful / weak to scale. He could be easily, way greater beyond all comprehension in niggas type thing. I don't know. I think, all qualifications, he easily should be above the rest of like different great lot, but isn't like a Viltrumite greater level type person. Probably like a Dinosaurus or even over Dinosaurus level person. I think that's a bare minimum of where he could be, because he could just be, way beyond the comprehension of people. Then you have Onan, twin brother to Ursula. He's very mixed shaky scale. He obviously was able to hold Mark back after being mixed rusty and different convenience and different conversation, but I don't think Onan is that really big standout powerful. But I probably would give Onan the same credit of being like of a surprising for the case of his, not full Viltrumite DNA kicking in and all that Onan would easily be, of a great standing of like at least teenage, Oliver, or maybe even like stretch lower. I think you could put him there, but he is very big, shaky, scaleless because Mark easily sludged his head open like a fucking grape. So, yeah, I don't know. In case of random fucking Mark variant. In case of a random form of like one of these Viltrumites that fought Omni-Man, in the case of this man, Mark, on Thraxel. He has just one of them shakes yelling, like, could have put him way more higher. This random fling of like arguably weirdest like perception in the idea for him, or mixes as well another Viltrumite that could be one of the more stronger, full, keen agents for different like, scouring worlds, being dominators, meaning that they, for Viltrumite agent mixed association, be very up there, and as well comparison to another, be like at a time of Thrag, wasn't like Emperor, could have been like the best the Viltrum Empire could ever see, the best warrior, the ultimate, dominator, elite standing, pioneer of Viltrumite power, all that shit. But I think in every form that these Viltrumite agents, just because they're Viltrumites, would probably stand for a greater argument, and they'll be, like, means of supporting of each other in the idea of different cross record of fighting and doing things within the mix of like, fighting alongside, each other against Omni-Man and Invincible could glorify them to be only really good in pairs, because by themselves, even though obviously Mark was holding back and Mark was just not as strong in any capacity scaling to them, and unlike comparison to Thula, in the case of that same position in the comics, the brother really most time was only a little bit of pushing her back and rocking. He wasn't really of the same scope of greater power, and even then, because of him holding back and his morality, bounding him to a mixed like confliction of really going all out and dishing that same level of cathartic bloodlust as them. I think it's simply put that they would just be higher than Lucan bare minimum, right? And Lucan doesn't seem like he got any greater progressive power unless you think like he got a greater, up one. I'll just probably put them as a whole thing up there when we get to them. He's more just deliberately the whole speedster thing. I don't really have any greater like remembrance or call like scaling that really would put her in greater detail, right? There's something like more detail. I think this is Pegasus, same thing, just not very good or strong. Then this golem ass nigga, I don't remember anything of greater like form of him, just being a rampage in person. Then you have, so we're doing a chair, who the fuck is that? I don't know, possibly more Reaniman, the general greater like glorified, Reaniman that don't have these weapons and all that would probably be on the same stand. Red Rush, and not as greater absurd, showcasing of speed and greater height, like in the comics. Right? Rick, Robot, at a certain point of his general, like, bare minimum stand, I would say Robot, again, without prep time, was probably a Cajun Pandroid being a very capable person, but is definitely not at a lot of forms really like that, so I think probably right there. Robot's entire case of army, though, right? Like, as much as they're showing at the Pentagon and his whole possible arsenal against a person, the prep time going to stretch probably a lot more higher. By itself, though, I would probably say he would be a glorified, ridiculous run of, like, opposition, but, like, the most ridiculously powerful would definitely be way beyond his comprehension, I think. Probably top of metahuman, maybe bare minimum at the bottom of this, because I feel like the standing of power of these people was just way too ridiculous, because all these people in own right could easily thrash, run, and just steamrail All these people, full fucking, barrage of multiple robots would just be fling of just scrap metal across the entire battlefield, and these people could entirely just cruise through him as a person, right? So whatever, right? Ragnars. Now I give the context of being on that planet, but I just feel like on any planet, especially within rereading, they were just built different because I actually forgot that this man Thrag fought the Cement Battle Beast on Rex. I thought he fought him on there because he was going there to go and try to build like a farm with them. Cause I thought he already had his breeding different setup there and built like a new subsequent like Camp Kingdom there. But that was just my case of ignorance. But when it comes down to the case of these Ragnars, right? Ragnars are ridiculously powerful, and because of the case of the gravity of their planet, their harsh environment, every standing of them, they're just way beyond most different Viltrumites standing. And I think consistently, like a good pack 6-8 of these niggas are so ridiculous. Given the chance, bro, they would just be beyond niggas' comprehension. And Dinosaurus and Look was compared to a Ragnar. I don't feel like you take that at too high face value to say he's actually on a level of Ragnar's. I do feel like it would be a contention fight, but it would be too much for him, even if he might be like proportionally bigger. I think how Ragnar's did these people, right, even in like a equal advantage environment, to actually be of good standing and being on leashes and having a lot of context and contextualism, were greater, stronger. But I think even with their multi-pack things, that the greater, stronger people should beat them. So I think they maybe could stop at Mark, but Mark had a very mixed feeling of even fighting them in some aspects. And I mainly think just because of inexperience and Nissa the same, she literally died by one, that you could put him at least right there. But they're very kind of shaky that you would be mixed to say, but I think that's a good quality of placement, right? Robot, with just like his greater advanced suit, I would probably just say is in the same standing of like their suit would possibly, yes, but even like greater cases of equipment, a lot of that one-on-one might not be working to his best degree, especially in comparison to Brit. And I still feel very strong on this, that a lot of his stuff, even if it could hurt greater Viltrumites and take people out on ready, on go, witnessing what he's gonna pull and how he's gonna do shit without catching people lacking, without predetermined case of matter of just randomly pulling up on people and pulling different maneuvers of the absolute most bitch-made, biggest cunt, manipulative snake you will ever see, that without the case of just randomly Smith and Wesson people, Franklin Satan niggas, that it wouldn't actually go his way, right? The case of the second mixed astronaut that might supposed to be, that's supposed to be that, and not just like some damaged astronaut that I don't know. Then random case of who's a weak person. You have Eve in general. Maybe with it. Well, I'm making a video. Let me finish my thing.
I don't need no help.
Alright, if you really need help, I'll help you to make. Can I finish my video?
I could get some help.
Alright, hold on.
I teach you. What you gonna do when you live here?
Well, I do live here. Alright. Well, I'm not. Just like, if you need help with the furnace, I'm gonna get on that. Ignore that. Anyway, they're going ahead and full finish though. Eve herself, being now this hyperscope like her battle armor, should just be of the same stand. There's no real big difference. I don't know there's another case of Eve here. And then you have the case of this man, like Samson's Bustler, over here randomly crashing out with his armor /suit. I think it's supposed to be Savage Dragon, right? Now, I'm not gonna act like I know serious about Savage Dragon. This is where we get to the more interesting fun of like the conversation of some people. I've not read Savage Dragon super. I do know that he fights obviously in Invincible War, and he did something of great capable, whatever mixed standing. Never shows up after those events for mixed copyright or whatever case of like issues. But there's a lot of people that just show up to just show that we're a part of the Image Comics universe. But if you really think about it, are just Invincible's Prime Universe version that are very mixed trippy to really conclusively say and define if they actually are the original comic book, the original stories version. Savage Dragon, I know about. He has a DC memorable and like iconic design. I like it. The case of the whole fucking, fish fin, mohawk, galley, whatever you want to call it. But the brother literally doesn't do anything big remarkable. He doesn't really stand granted to the different opposition that come with, the Magnemites, the Kaijus, the Invincible variants. Him and his daughter didn't really do anything too much. I have not read his Gritter comics. I know he's like something of a decent, like, powerful big dog, right? But a lot of different comic book people, and I just feel like we need to get out the way. They're not on the same level. Like, for instance, they have Spawn here. If Spawn exists and a lot of these people exist within the Invincible universe, not only would it be so many continuity errors, so many questions, so many plot holes, so many just what the fuck is happening. But I think this is more just supposed to be cameos. It's more for jokes. If you think about it too much, it actually brings a lot of problems to the verse. And I feel like you just have to accept it was just more of like a publicity, like, reputation flex. It's not supposed to actually be taken seriously, because Spawn and Savage Dragon should not work. They should not exist within this world. They just should not. This shit is retarded. It doesn't make sense. And there's no way you're going to tell me an Invincible variant that's way weaker than the Gritter run of different characters in the verse beat this man Spawn. Because if we search that, base Spawn is like hyperversal, outerverse, I don't know. Because I haven't read Spawn in a minute. Like, Spawn is ridiculously OP. So telling me that Invincible beat Spawn, you're fucking lying. The only reason why I put him way more higher is because I consider the fact he's supposed to be Spawn, because this version of Spawn of Prime Invincible did defeat that variant from what I mixed know, regardless of be a mixed mustache to mixed, like, kind of trippy of knowing, of having a different look and feel as Mark, to be of like a Mark without a mustache, being recruited to the Viltrum Empire, being raised on Viltrum. So, no, like, Spawn even existing should make sense. And it's even this, like, a bunch of teams, like, even Spider-Man too. Like, obviously, canonically, Invincible did go to 616 and meet Spider-Man, but even if it's supposed to be just an Invincible reform look or whatever, you're supposed to be Spider-Man, I feel like Spider-Man would be the same thing. Even though I could scale Spider-Man to this verse, and, obviously I talked about Spider-Man scaling before. I talked about Miles, and, he would actually be surprisingly very powerful, right? Depending on how you want to, push the bar and shit. And I do think that, even at Mark's most powerful, mainly with the black suit, he could be of a great challenge. But I don't want to go ahead and mix in Marvel scaling, because even though that crossover can be the fact that possibly there is a database, the knowledge of Mark Grayson and mix of, even though they didn't do too much like power scaling, real exertment, it was more like a character, cool, just funny crossover. I'm not gonna scale like a Marvel cosmology template for this, because that's when his tales just get way longer. I'm not gonna put Peter in here and say what I think could be, even though, again, I do think he's pretty up there, as I've obviously talked about Mark Grayson versus, Spider-Man. Go check that video out. But, yeah, it's just, like, a lot of these niggas, they shouldn't exist. They don't make sense. It doesn't make sense for them to exist. And I don't even know who they are like that. Like, I haven't read these comics. I'm not going to make it seem like I greater know about them. Like, I know about Fire Breather. I know about the Pack. I know about all this. But, like, Savage Dragon himself, and not just the Invincible version. Like, I don't know where he would be. His daughter here, I don't know super about her. Like, this is just where you have to accept that these guys are just here for crossover. I don't know how true they really exist in it. They're never mentioned. They're never brought up in conversation. There's never a showcase of how they see, the world. And I feel like Robert Kirkman, a lot of them just forgot that they tried to include all these interesting heroes in here just because it would be an interesting crossover, but not just thinking about the actual, like, severity of it. And I'm glad that the show, especially because it just wouldn't make sense with all these copyright holdings, it just wouldn't make sense. A lot of these teams are obscure, so their power scaling, what they are, Invincible with them, what they can pull, I have no strong understanding or grasp of what they are and what they can do. They're nothing of that sort. Science Dog is not even real. I don't know if he has his own individual comics to try to show some power scaling, but he's not real. Powerplex is a very iffy case of dude. He's just very, like, wacky to really say where he could be. Obviously, he could hurt Invincible, but just more or less pushing him back. And it's really if people hit him. So full juice, full charge, I would probably bet money on the fact that he's easily able to push back dozens and dozens of these different people, but he would only get so far and probably be like, above Kid Thor, maybe from different range and shit. But if he ever got hit with enough to really knock him out, he probably would be down, but he posted Zorbo to kinetic energy, so he's a very mixed person you could scale, but I think that's, again, fair. Set, though, was a very powerful, very, heavy pedestal of, like, a dark, brooding, very, intimidating, from a Black Adam regard of, like, Shao Kanin argument of an ultimate behemoth, an ultimate fearsome, uncontestable, demon that would every second of every way when he would come down would drown motherfuckers in their own blood. The man was every level of moving like a berserker from God of War, with the claim of being just a simple, unstoppable force and a pillar of hands, you know what I'm saying? So I would say, depending on how you greater stretch his bar upscale, he could definitely be a lot more greater powerful. I don't think he's really high Viltrumite level, but I think he's like bare minimum of mix of his just like scaling to people who could wipe a life or Planet Wipers. I probably would maybe say he could be on this level, but I don't know. He's very much powerful. He's very peak meta-human. He's above everybody in the Guardians of the Globe easily, going by narrative. So like he's just ridiculous. I know Shea Smith has some crazy like maneuvers, like the Mr. Fantastic, Strata Girl, the Elastic Girl, the fucking Dawson Plastic Man, but he's kind of mixed to really scale those consistently, right? And then you have the original Ray. I can't say much about Sinclair, same thing. Mantis, don't know either. You have Space Racer. But instead with the fact that nobody's ever been able to take a direct blast from this man, he pretty much disintegrate anybody in his path, and has been an elite shooter for multiple times throughout the galaxy. He is absolutely legendary and built different. I think it's because of him actually directly fighting people and shooting with people. He would be beyond a lot of different people's possible scope of understanding and fighting, but the higher end people probably be way too much, way too fast, knowing of the gun, outspeed him, outdo him, overpower him, and he barely even escaped from that, and he was entirely running from him, and that dang near killed his ass. So yeah, like I think that's a good placement for him. This man Chow, I'm saying his name right, was so powerful the Guardians of the Globe had to go ahead and pull a big form of like Maroon planning with him. So depending on how you stretch that, I mean, like the real like big dogs, like heavy hitters, like he could be up here, but I think he doesn't have much verifiable scaling to really put him more higher than others, to where it just kind of gets wacky to really say. Tech Jacket, I see in the regards that him in comparison, right, as a person, being very mixed to greater say, but the fact he was fine with multi cases of the Viltrumites, heard his own story that he's very cracked, and by the different placements and different arguments, I think that Tech Jacket is probably a good to presume is easily a lot more better candidate of fighting this someone like this case with lineup of people that he would be under, with Adam Eve, Darkwing, Inksim Levy, and Greater Grand Scope fighting, but I don't know if he's really on the same higher boast as capable and powerful as these people. But I would like to say they could bear them like greater compete with people than like Mark, who's just a lot more experienced than him. But I wouldn't really see Tech Jacket as that much higher end than others. I definitely think he's very powerful. I think he deserves to be here. I haven't fully read Gritty of his comics. I just know the showcases in Invincible and other stuff, but Tech Jacket is definitely, some very Jack of all trades person. I know that there's a YouTuber in the sense of Tyler trying to go make a video of him fighting MCU Iron Man, so I like to say just by whatever like face value with MCU Iron Man that he definitely has some crazy regard or capability, but isn't so ridiculously of different boasts. Then you have truly, this man Dinosaurus in the case of his alternate human side. White Fee, this man Alan Terra showcase that she's beyond like some random whatever means of father, and shows that she has the early gifts of Mark. I think it is true that in mixed season 2 or new costume Mark, that she would be on the same point of level of, and not so much greater stronger. But I can save an argument to say that Terra could be on the same level of Marcus, with the idea of she's too powerful / weak to scale, or you could say she probably would be a lot more confidently this and that. But I would bet on the idea that she's just the same thing. We just need more cogent evidence to really supply where she could be at. Thaddeus though killed the Great Ogle, obviously through a case of deceptive plan and not face him in true battle. The Trade Ultraman Empire was throwing ideas of the case that people were an absolute plague of ill to the universe and need to be wiped out. And very powerful, right, in the end, in the case of the Ultramite War, and I think they deserve at least the credibility to be of a greater mixed batter of like standing. They're like Dula in it, but wasn't as super great or stronger. Got one shot in speed blitz by this man Thrag, and really all he was a simple like inconvenience in the grand scope to a lot of people. He really wasn't anything super standard. Says brother had be contingent, right? And wherever you feel like an understanding of fighting is better is where they would be. I think in every sense that they are this very one-to-one powerful people. It seems like this man Onan will be beyond. I think the only big caveat for him maybe being higher is absorbing energy, but people who are just way more physically stronger, and in fact this energy thing seems to be on people that hold a great substance of like greater outward energy of life force that could really actually be overpowered, aka you have to overpower your enemy to gain energy, right? He could never actually do that with these people because they should be bar none way more powerful. I do think there's maybe a capability for him to do that, but the fact that it isn't working physically, he's not that great or strong, and there's also like speed and the fact that they could just whack him when the time comes and too much overwhelming force. I think that he would just get bodied in the end. Thrag, in the case for his whole ultimate power, even with the consideration for a possible alternate version of him, right? In the case before he defeated Battle Beast in his greater shining of different power, people do have a mixed argument of feeling that Thrag is still the ultimate pillar of power, or he's at least relative, right? Because of the fact that not only is Thrag like multiple times seen as being a higher grand stroke top dog, without the case getting jumped by the Ragnars, without the case of his intestines being out, without his context, without his hubris, Thrag was like the ultimate symbol of might and power for his people. Thrag was the big dunzel, immaculate fade, unstoppable, unbenchable. Thrag is easily top dog in a lot of different arguments. His children, a very mixed fodder of just pretty much running at people and just dying and getting easily slaughtered. The weakest of the weak. These are just high-bred, just multi-children fascinated on the means of trying to fight for the glory of Viltrum with no care and consideration, with all this case of bad and trouble to be pouring about and seeing. So I feel like they easily would just be above a great deal until they get to these different people, but they're so weak that again the mixed argument of two powerful sides should lead to really confidently scale, and they're just more bodies. I forgot her name, but Inertia, aka the ex-wife via Battle Beast and later girlfriend of this man Space Racer, Body Ting, right? She, from just different occasions of mainly a much maroon planet and other stuff, killing some different case of Viltrumite soldiers, right? I would say maybe she could be something a little bit more greater, but I wouldn't put her on any real strong baseness to be something way more stronger. She's not really like that for real, and I think in every regards that she's more or less like a just whatever toss up of fighting, and you could easily say like she's that most efficient scaling. She was knocked out by Speed Racer, right? Speed Racer actually means of like punching in this. I don't know exactly what I said. I might have said that so fast because obviously Space Racer, I'd be thinking Speed Racer because this motherfucker is a certified shooter and blitzer. But with that being said, Space Racer cracked her with the iconic fucking little Spider-Man level of pose knockout. And obviously it was in the mix of her just hauling with anger, wanting to avenge her love, wanting to even die for him and all that, right? With her form of like Yoda speech. But again, even with like Space Racer knocking her like a speedster, right? She was just trying to mainly just throw and do a lot of different like inconvenience of killing and fighting. And I don't think you really could properly scale her. She shouldn't really be so much more better, especially these people that have like similar durabilities, hacks, and all that. I would just again put her more or less here, what is being said, but I respect her for trying to go avenge her man and trying to help her man in the end, even if it was a disrespect to what he was trying to go about, which was an honorable faith of a one-on-one. Great advanced version of Titan, don't care. In the case of like a bunch of different still reanimate form of Invincibles and all this shit, the same work. One of these people, Universa, mainly the case of her staff and all that, being of some different mixed intriguing means a challenge, right, to this man Mark. Without the staff, she doesn't seem to be too booming different, like powerful, right, to be honest. And so I could see her, mainly with getting disarmed, multi-different case of like conflict situations, not being as powerful, you could say, because like Adam even Mark her beyond, that she could be like stopping at people like them. I would bet with the staff and how powerful it was to even push back Mark or do something like that, that she would probably stop at like higher in this. But I think again she's just too shaky to really say where you could really put her 9 times out of 10 most confidently. Because again, because this random form of ultramite soldier is fighting on the case of Thraxa. These dudes have fought Alan and Omni-Man from the prison. To say it's a little bit more because of these statements, they probably would be a little bit more higher, but I could see them just being above them of the general rest and not anything too big to scoff at, right? So it would just be the same thing. I'm just fighting a little bit more in that regards. Then you have fucking Dread. There's this weakness. War Woman, same thing. Mixed thing to go on scale. One of them. You have the case of her wifey, aka her girlfriend, who was going about actually slapping up some people and actually was seen of a greater possible endearing threat on some like reverse from a Cersei gladiatorial big bok woman coming at niggas like fucking Angela, you know what I'm saying? She killed Iron nigga, was about to kill Chupacabra and all that. And it was very vindictive, like hella sides. This guy, Britt, if I feel like either like some mace or she full like punk kicked this nigga, pulled a center in her arm, so I don't even know. And even if she has this hyper kid, this sex misogynist, you know what I'm saying? Like Stan, it will never remove the fact that this shawty is one undeniably powerful brute woman, right? Like whatever gives a gracing of her on some Amazonian big, like, you know what I'm saying, snoo power is definitely something to be feared, right? So again, even with her being like a filso, if you want to call her that, right? Counting of like, you know, her mindset and battle and all that stuff, even with the occasions of her being very like hella yappy and mad like with it, I still think there's an argument that she could be a lot more because of expression powerful, but she's still very much of a mixed argument too, probably slash weak to scale because she doesn't have so much more, very much not really greater strong condensement of scaling to really best say that she most probably would be here. So I feel like in the end, being over like Bray over a lot of these people, even with the numbers and all that, she's very skilled enough, powerful, capable, that it would take like a real great combatant or great power to really put her down. And I think Powerplex would be like where she would reasonably stop. So like, yeah. Another case of fucking Invincible, man. So many of these motherfuckers, man. Well, man, a very saddening and endearing character that I actually have a lot more intrigue about. Maybe I could read more of his comics, but for a little bit of I read and even being able to like push back this man Powerplex and do a little bit, I would say he wouldn't actually be this high. Doesn't mean just get a full look. I'm not over here on crack now. I would say that he would probably be a little bit more in these upper tiers, maybe a little bit more over Japan Droid because he is a very, you know, efficient, you know, savage scrapper and, you know, is basically kin to like Saberwolf from Killer Instinct out here. But I don't know if he's like this much greater. I think it's just because of the capabilities, skill, and all that. Then I'm confident to say that, yeah, he probably would be that much more high. I think that he is a great standing comparison, especially fighting alongside Invincible, taking on reanimants and doing all that. It's very capable and efficient dude, so I respect that. Big Yeti, adorable little Yohanar. I fuck with him. I'm gonna be honest, I feel like he's very like washed in the grand scope. Don't get to it, he's very durable and capable. He's very powerful and all that, and he's very lovable, right? I love him. You know, the Groot of the Guardians of the Galaxy in some way, the King Shark almost. But I'm not gonna lie, I do think like he's very physically powerful. In the words of Britt, he shows great promise. But I think he probably would stop in more confident form of everything when he gets to like a lot more powerful, engaging people. Like, he probably be right here. But I think, yeah, probably just put him there. I think he's just a little bit too wonky of scaling to really say. Right? You know, little terrorist, cute little, okay, Juby, ready to fight anybody, right? She got a great sense of heart. She is pretty much the Kiku of Invincible. Has no grit for her rubble tail, like scaling and capabilities. Where the fuck of a case of a person in the grand margin of like scale and capability, right? So yeah. In the case of Savage Mark, as a form of a cannibal, being a craved bloodlustful person and trying to eat people. The Invincible variant that could ever like hold and catch up and do anything to Mark, and being one of, if not possibly Pit the greater strongest of people, I would probably pedestal him at least bare minimum to be at that mixed point with Mark and everything in the category of what he was, mainly being a greater deal beyond this point. Probably like at least on these greater levels, but I think anyone that actually sees what his intentions are, which is to eat him, he's getting ripped in half, and he could easily be overpowered in the end by the case of all these people. So I think you could just say he's right there. Even with being more in calm mind, it's going to be the same thing. And the rest of these different Mark variants, they're just so feetless, fatherless, don't make no difference. They don't have anything to stand out. They might have interesting lore behind them, designs and other shit, but they're just so fucking weak. They have nothing of real relevance. They're just booty cheeks as people. They have nothing to really take from an actual good or scaling or anything of that sort. They're just very, up in the air, whatever the case type people, and all of them would inadvertently be in the same category. And this is all because not only as I'm explaining why I'm putting them all here, just because of the fact that they are people that die from the most weaker greater things. They die from people at points in time who, even though we know their greater power, a lot of them are where you see them, in a tier of the lowest standing of actual greater power. They are just not people who actually deserve true greater scaling. The only person, besides the case of obviously, Savage Cannibal Mark, is Mohawk Mark, was saying that he is the Emperor of the Viltrum. But again, we don't know how powerful the greater deal with this might are. But the fact that he did what he did to this Mark, and possibly have full power and all the things that he can do, and how he was, I would conclude that he at least is better than a great band of these different people in power and capability. Is something of way greater, possible standing comparison. But the rest of these people, right, are just nothing of greater relevance. Like this Mark, he died by a tech jacket, right? This Mark died by a fucking yo-yo, and I actually used as an insult against somebody rocking the case of his profile picture one time. It was pretty funny, right? And this guy, right, is just simply put, a figured prison Mark who over here looking like Freddy Krueger. Shiesty Mark in the show was doing a great interesting means of like fucking, angsty demon time like instance, and I love the voice acting by Stevie Young. You could tell this motherfucker adores his job as repping Mark, evil, positive, whatever the case of version is, right? I really love every aspect of his character. It's very dope to see. And have the case or random fucking Viltrumite Mark that could have shown a lot more potential, and it's one of the people eaten by the case of Mark, but doesn't make no difference, right? So there you go. You actually have his bay here, the lower people, so we'll go ahead and place her. Don't worry about the case of these different replicate people, right? You see every different variety of these different people. Okay. Boom. Same thing. Rex Splode, our glorious king, our glorious goat. Love him, but he's not really stand out like that. I'm going to keep it a buck. I would like to give him the best credit for his explosives and how Rockefeller Tracy can be with his different means of firework capabilities and shit like that. You could give him easily the placement right there. He's very capable of everything that he has. Then you have the case of Battle Beast's daughter, who doesn't actually have a name. Cool name could be for her is Liana, which is Latin for lioness. Again, too powerful / weak to scale. We don't know greater what she could do. She has a cool design, has cool potential. Hopefully it could be adapted, in greater form within the show. But again, nothing to greater say. We're pretty much done with this. I'm just going to be kind of placing the last and greater efforts of people. Thrag in the idea of just where he was at as being the high supreme, grandstand, the safeguarder, the ultimate emperor, the pretty much Genghis Khan of the galaxy, and repping the highest valor of strength for a different plane, would easily be at a mixed point, you could say, in the grand scope, just still high as it can be. You can maybe say this version of Thrag be a lot more under in comparison to the greater Thrag. I think in the end that this would just be on the greater like contingent stand, depending on how you feel about who's going to make strength this and who's not, that he would be there, and mainly just off a 500-year time skip. Do you think Allen's stronger? And then that, but I think that Allen is not on the same level, and mainly it's like in the argument of like a certain time that Thrag was different. But it's just if you feel it's a little bit different on like mixed corresponding to events and experience and time, and the fact that you still feel like Thrag was so much of a higher being of ridiculous magnitude and power, and we didn't really see it evolve. Allen bang out with multi-creative people, and at least he survived whatever mixed encounter with a way stronger Mark is someone of way greater relevance. That proves in every decree, and possibly a way more stronger version of Thrag going all out, all that, and now from the context of where he was, would still be mixed stronger than Battle Beast, but I could see Battle Beast again being bare minimum stronger than a Thrag like this with weapons, but a stronger Thrag, all that experience rocking him as a whole cape would be stronger. Now, for the famed grandfather of this man, Mark, the famed grandfather of Oliver, the great-grandfather of Terra, and Marcus, and as well children of this man Oliver. The great grand Argyle is a very mixed person. You could easily put him in too powerful / weak to scale, but the only reason why I put him possibly anywhere is even though yes, the Viltrumites valued Argyle because of his wisdom, how much of a great leader and highest template of grand unspeakable, unfathomable enrichment of glory he bestowed upon the Viltrumite race, and how much of a predominant pillar of unimaginable power, form of like a symbol of the highest valor, God to his people. The dude was the absolute staple of what you could reasonably call a sense of pretty much like Pharaoh to his people. He was this great emperor of unimaginable hail and height. The dude was, even if he wasn't in truth an emperor, he was the Gaius Julius Caesar, or Gaius Julius Kaiser of the Viltrumite Empire at its prime. And even though he was not repping the same calling of the herd in the case of the Dark Discord and a rupture of, spastic, crazed conflict and flagrantness of the Viltrumite Empire, it still was very prevalent that to be the emperor, to be this high standard, be of this ridiculous magnitude, you would be of some different severity, of great strength. This man, Thrag, hold him in great respect. Obviously, there was some form of inspiration, form of worship, and being, even though not his pupil, he was pretty much the greatest means of successor in grand scope to hail to him. He was, in every regard, the pretty much Godfrey to Thrag's Star Scourge Radon. He was that prevalent of a great thing. He was the Odin. This nigga Thrag was the Thor. He was the Zeus. This nigga was the Ares if he had the might of Hercules. He was every record of that format. But again, he mainly hold his skull in heavy means of worship, not only because of trying to avenge his great lord, and as Grand Regent, he truly isn't the true strong emperor. He's just a man upholding the state of like the values and form of like, culture and civilization of things together, in the absence of the true rightful monarch. He was just more or less, stationary leader, right? And it's kind of like Kublai Khan standing in comparison to his Genghis Khan like role. Argyle was so great that you could argue, even though he said he was a greater emperor than himself, maybe not in power, that he easily could have been at a time, being at least bare minimum stronger than the greater echelon of people. Conquest from being older and being this high-end enforcer could be stronger. He could be stronger than like the bare minimum of all known emperors. He could be he could be all this. He was the emperor of the prime of the empire when they were at their peak population. And their population, anything similar to Earth, there could have been millions, billions, or all kind of people like that. I mean, the estimated possible grand scope of like, highest population of the Viltrumites was hundreds of thousands. So like, he was just built different. Now, again, I still think he's like too powerful / weak maybe to scale, but I would give him the best credibility that, he could just be like this, right? I love the design for him and all that, but yeah, like that's the whole tier list, right? I feel like there's a strong tier list. I know there's a long one almost probably pushing 3 hours at this point. A great big long one to overview and overlook Case of Tears. I feel like this is a very much more strong, understandable mental consistency, multi-collage, multi-compacted, greater run of rationale and deeply analytic observation, of all the characters and rep with, again, great speaking. A lot of characters can be mix and match. A lot of characters are relative. A lot of niggas are contingent. It's a very heavily debatable and different concept and consideration tiers. But I think a lot of this is understandable, heavy understandable, and all different reasonable means of valid to very much point characters and most different consistent boasts on. Shout out to the case of multiple cases, not only the people involved with Invincible, peak story. Shout out to Robert Kirkman, to Ryan Otley, and Corey Walker. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace out, my army. Love y'all.